The weather with Nate Boone.
Ex-tropical cyclone Diane is continuing to pummel Western Australia and increasingly the territory as it shifts eastwards. It's lost its cyclone strength for sure, but it's still bringing with it quite a lot of wet weather, and the cloud cover is also going to help really cool things down around there through central Australia. Not so cool over in the west, lots of heat there, and for parts of the south of the country where we've got some gusty winds, we've got plenty of high fire danger to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, the low pressure system that helped drench Queensland and northern New South Wales, leading to the major flooding that's still ongoing, sitting offshore, it's pushing some winds and showers into the coast of New South Wales with hazardous surf there. We'll watch this rain as it creeps through the interior over the next couple of days, but for now, Queensland's still dealing with some heavy falls in the north of the state. Even Brisbane's looking at a possible shower today. It's getting to 29, but for the most part, over those flooded areas, the skies are relatively clear. 24 in Sydney. You can expect a wet and windy one. It's getting to 22 with a possible shower in Canberra today. Melbourne's aiming for 21, partly cloudy skies for you. 17 in Hobart. You can expect some showers. Over in South Australia, Adelaide's looking for a clear 25 degrees. 34 in the west for Perth, and up top Darwin dealing with some showers, maybe a storm as well. You'll get to 32 degrees. In the days ahead, we'll watch ex-tropical cyclone Diane as it reaches the east, bringing a short, sharp burst of big falls over those flooded areas in Queensland and northeastern New South Wales. That'll happen Wednesday, but then clear fairly quickly, and then we're back to a much more regular routine of fronts in the south and a bit of tropical activity in the north, but still plenty of falls, particularly concerning for those regions experiencing flooding as we speak. Water's continuing to rise for many communities that'll be cut off, some potentially for weeks. Tomorrow, we're looking at some more wet weather in Brisbane and then a clear one for the rest of the south, except for Hobart. A couple of showers down that way. And up top, no change for Darwin. Couple of showers, maybe a storm. Top of 31.
Thanks, Nate. And there's more on the ABC News app and on ABC iView. I'm Gemma Veness. Coming up on the ABC News channel, we'll have the latest from the campaign trail, plus more on all our top stories. Just a moment.
The federal election is on. Head to ABC News Online for the latest news, analysis, live blogs and policy promises, what they mean for you. Be part of the conversation with your say. Tell us what's on your mind, what questions you want answered. Plus Anthony Green's guide to key seats and daily updates from the ABC's unrivalled team of experts.
Your vote, your say. Go to abc.net.au/Australia Votes.
A Bite to Eat with Alice is back with a whole new season.
Presto!
I love it.
With fresh food and fresh faces.
It is so delicious. It's very juicy.
Mouth-watering recipes that anyone can make.
The oven does all the work.
Paired with delicious conversation. Do you often talk to your food?
I do. I talk to my food. It just makes my heart really happy.
That's a love story.
Join me for A Bite to Eat with Alice.
I love it here.
Weekdays at 5 or stream now on ABC iView.
The pursuit of truth can be challenging. Why should voters trust your commitments?
We haven't abandoned anything, Sarah.
Clarity is key.
My jaw fell to the floor.
Canada is not going to be the 51st state of the United States.
In the absence of answers, we challenge. Is it possible that you never find out what happened?
I don't know.
Every week, we're making sense of our ever-changing world.
We've never seen anything like that.
All in one place.
7:30 tonight, ABC TV and ABC iView. The groundbreaking show that captured the nation.
It was one of those weird TV dreams that actually came true.
8 young filmmakers race around the world.
What could possibly go wrong?
Just find someone on the street and peel them like an onion.
Their untold stories of survival.
It was a health and safety nightmare.
I got robbed, I got mugged.
Nervous breakdown territory.
We could have died and they didn't know about it.
Australian Story.
We were a family who shared something really amazing.
Tonight at 8, ABC.
You're with ABC News. It's 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 8 a.m. in the West. It's the start of the first full week of the election campaign. The leaders of the major parties are targeting key battleground electorates. The Prime Minister is in Western Australia, while the opposition leader has started the day in the Hunter region of New South Wales. Also ahead, a mother arrested after 3 children are stabbed at a home in Sydney's northwest. US President Donald Trump levels new threats at Russia and Iran. Residents in parts of Queensland and New South Wales are on high alert as floodwaters flow downstream. And Muslims around the world celebrate the end of Ramadan and the start of Eid. It's Monday, the 31st of March. I'm Gemma Veness, and this is ABC News Mornings. The opposition leader has reiterated power prices will be cheaper under a coalition government, but he's still yet to say by how much. Peter Dutton pointed to his plan to boost domestic gas supply as he toured a factory in Newcastle in the New South Wales Hunter region. Political reporter Isabel Rowe is there.
Peter Dutton has headed straight into Labor heartland this morning in the New South Wales Hunter region. We're in the seat of Paterson in Newcastle. It's held by Labor's Meryl Swanson on a 2.6% margin, and it's something that the coalition certainly has in their sights. They've brought their Liberal candidate Lawrence Antcliffe here today, and he's toured this facility called Cougar Mining, which is in the seat of Paterson. Peter Dutton has held a wrench. He's tried to tighten up some screws. He also sat in a big mining car and awkwardly sat there as the person sitting next to him couldn't start it. I'm sure he's hoping that that is not a sign of things to come. Big on his agenda today is this energy policy. His plan, he says, to bring more gas into the system. He was asked repeatedly about whether or not power prices would come down immediately and by how much. He wasn't able to give a specific answer on how much power bills would come down.
There are two offerings at the next election, Andrew. One is from the government, which is guaranteeing you that electricity prices will go higher if Labor's re-elected. Right, let's be clear about that. Electricity and gas is up by 32% and 34% now. Mr Albanese's plan promises Australians that they will pay more for electricity and gas after the election. Our plan, which is to create an East Coast reserve, brings more gas into the system. If we bring more gas into the system, and don't forget that gas is not just used at home, but natural gas is used to generate electricity. And it will be across the economy, not just in households, but in businesses like this one, which will benefit. So we will have, in terms of our offering at the next election, to the Australian people, a definite plan about how we can reduce prices. Not just keep downward pressure, but I want to reduce power prices. I want to reduce power prices because that's how we're going to bring grocery prices down.
Well, Peter Dutton's plans for the rest of the day are being kept under wraps, but we do know that he will head back to Brisbane, his hometown, tonight. It's a seat he's already been to in this campaign, and it is particularly important as it is a marginal seat, as are several seats in that Brisbane area. It's something that Peter Dutton will have his eyes on as those polls tighten.
Let's go to Parliament House in Canberra now. Political reporter Pablo Vinales is following the Prime Minister's campaign. Now, Pablo, what is Anthony Albanese up to today?
Gemma, well, the Prime Minister taking his campaign to the West. He is in Western Australia. He will be standing up alongside WA's Premier Roger Cook, who himself had his own emphatic victory at the state election a few weeks ago. We know that there will be a local announcement, a $200 million upgrade to the St John of God Midland Public Hospital. That will be with a contribution from the state government as well. At the last election in 2022, Labor won 4 seats in WA. It was key to its election victory then, and we know that Labor is hoping to hold on to try and buffer some losses it is anticipating in other parts of the country, in suburban Sydney, in the western suburbs, and also concerns in some of the seats in Melbourne, in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. So WA crucial to Labor's campaign because of the seats and the buffer it provides them.
And Pablo, a YouGov poll has Labor favouring better in recent weeks. How's the government responding to that?
Yeah, there have been 3 major opinion polls that have come out that essentially show statistically the coalition and the government are neck and neck at 50-50, but it does show some momentum going towards the Labor Party. It is incremental, but it suggests that Labor has made up some ground after trailing the coalition for much of last year. A number of the polls, Resolve is at 50-50. News poll has Labor leading 51-49. 51.49, and a freshwater poll has the Coalition ahead at 51.49. Now, as is often the case in election campaigns, both parties are claiming the underdog status here. The Deputy Prime Minister, the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, was asked about some of these changes we have seen in the polling.
This is a close election. I think everyone knows we're coming from behind. That's the way in which we're proceeding here. But we're also really focused on making sure that we are telling the story to the Australian people about what we've done in relation to focusing on cost of living relief, which has really been our focus since the time that we've come into power.
Gemma, there was also some YouGov modelling yesterday that shows a swing back to Labor and that majority government is potentially in sight for the government. The modelling shows that Labor is ahead in 10 seats where it was behind 6 weeks ago. But we should stress this is incremental change. They are within the margin of error, some of these changes we have seen. But there is a trend that does suggest that momentum is going towards Labor. Of course, these polls will tighten the closer we get to polling day. And of course, we are in the very early days of the election. There are still 5 weeks to go, Gemma.
Political reporter Pablo Vinales in Canberra. Thank you. Let's get more on the election campaign now with the ABC's elections analyst Casey Briggs. He says Western Sydney will again be a key battleground area.
This is a really important part of the country in this election because, yes, there are a lot of people here, which means there are a lot of seats here. But if you look at the electoral pendulum, you can see why New South Wales is so important. For the Coalition to win majority government, they would need to pick up 19 seats in this election. If you just look at the first 19 most marginal Labor seats, 8 of them are in New South Wales. 3 of them are in Western Sydney in particular, and if you broaden out to look at the Central Coast and the Hunter region as well, you get another 4. So there's a significant swag of seats in this region where there are particular commonalities in issues, the cost of living crisis, mortgage stress, access to things like healthcare that are biting across this entire region, as well as the sort of transport issues. This is going to be one of the key battlegrounds in this election.
So let's go to the key seats at play, and we'll start with Parramatta, currently held by Labor. Is this a safe seat for Labor?
Well, it has been. Labor's held it since 2004. This seat is on a 3.7% margin. What we're seeing is in this part of the country, seats that Labor has held for quite some time are getting slowly more marginal. There have been quite a few boundary changes in Parramatta as well. It gets nudged back and forth as the North Shore of Sydney grows and shrinks and the population changes there. In the last round of redistributions, it did lose some of the Labor voting areas south of the M4. Andrew Charlton holds this seat at the moment. It's going to be one of those key signs for, well, look, a 3.7% swing is all it would take to lose it. It's one of the ones that the Coalition would be hoping to pick up. If they can hold on here, if Labor can hold on here, it will be a very good sign for them retaining government. Broaden out seats like Reid as well in Western Sydney. Labor's only held that since 2022, but it does have a long Labor history. It's only been really held by the Coalition during the last Coalition government between 2013 and 2022. Reid's named after one of the lesser-known PMs, George Reid, who was PM for 11 months in 1904. Again, a seat that used to be a safe Labor seat is now considerably more marginal. And other seats that we haven't really talked about as being in play in previous elections, seats like Werriwa, which is growing again, increasingly more marginal. 5.3% is the margin at the moment. It's never not been a Labor seat. What we're watching for this election is to see if cost of living, but also a sort of broader disaffection with government, dissatisfaction with politics as usual might hurt the Labor vote here. There are polls that have been suggesting that could be a seat. Other seats like it, or similar looking seats in Melbourne as well, in the outer reaches of Melbourne, could be in play here. If that is the kind of seat that goes, if we start seeing seats like Werriwa in Melbourne, seats like Hawke and McEwen, that's a bit of a sign that Labor's got some maybe more structural problems to think through, because these are the kinds of seats that you would call Labor heartland. If you start losing them and you're the Labor Party, you have a problem.
Now, there was a lot of attention on the seat of Fowler at the last election. So the story there that Labor infamously parachuted Christina Keneally into that seat. She lost to independent Dai Lee, who's a Vietnamese immigrant with ties to the community. Tu Lee was overlooked for pre-selection in that. Labor now seems to have learnt their lesson, and they're putting her up against Dai Lee. What are her chances this time round?
Yeah, Labor's got to really rebuild trust with the community here after that, I think we can say, spectacularly bad pick for a candidate, someone that, you know, lived on Scotland Island on the north shore of Sydney, coming into Western Sydney, a very culturally diverse area, did not really gel with the electorate, and the electorate responded. The problem for Labor is winning a seat that you don't hold is much harder than holding a seat that you do have. Di Lee has the advantages of incumbency. She's had 3 years now to build connections. She's got, you know, the resources of a parliamentarian. So Di Lee, when you look at polling that's been around, her vote does seem to be holding up. She is maybe, of the independents, one of the ones that would be more at risk, because this is, you know, it is a traditional kind of Labor voting area, but Labor's really got a challenge here to overcome the trust that it broke with people 3 years ago, and the fact that they are no longer the incumbents. People have seen another option, and the history of independents in Australia's parliament is, once they're elected, it is very hard to dislodge them. Not impossible, but it is difficult.
We mentioned a few seats there. Are there any others that you want to talk about that are at play here?
Well, Western Sydney's got a number of these examples of the way that we're seeing politics continue to fragment as well. In Brisbane, you're seeing it with the Greens. In inner Sydney, you're seeing it with the Teal Independents. We have these candidates running that were really motivated to run in Western Sydney on a platform of the war in Gaza, the issue of how Australia is handling that conflict, including in a couple of very safe Labor seats, Blaxland, that's the seat held by Jason Clare, the Education Minister, and Tony Burke, seat of Watson. We've got two candidates there. It's an example, I think, of this, you know, increasing complexity of the electorate. I think it's a really tall order for these candidates these independent candidates to get up. In order to be successful, you need a relatively strong primary vote, and you need to start collecting preferences from, you know, traditional Liberal voters. I think it's going to be really difficult. But what we might see is, and we'll watch for on election night, to see if the Labor primary vote in those seats goes down, because it could just be another vector, another axis of complexity, as we're seeing more and more and more of these contests become non-traditional two-party races, and politics getting, you know, more and more local in so many ways.
Now, Casey, you released exclusive polling yesterday, and we have covered that off a little bit this morning, but what was the snapshot of it? Yeah,
what we reported yesterday was a what's called a multi-level regression with post-stratification model. You and I, let's just call it MRP. It was done by YouGov. They've been doing these regularly through the campaign. They're not the only ones doing it, but they are a sort of more sophisticated, expensive form of modelling than a traditional poll. The upshot of that, I'll just explain quickly, it's based on tens of thousands of interviews, 38,000 interviews in this case, that are then modelled across all of the electorates to produce not just an estimate of the vote share, but also the seat share, who will win each individual seat. What we've learned yesterday is the Labor improvement that we've seen in the broader opinion polling industry in the last 6 weeks or so, it does appear to be real. We've seen 3 polls yesterday that sort of confirm that. This one suggests that Labor even might have a chance of winning majority government. The central estimate of that poll was 75 seats to Labor. 76 is a majority, so they're close. 60 for the coalition. It sort of suggests there are lots and lots of seats on a line ball. There are lots of seats that are very close. But Labor has really improved. 6 weeks ago, this same MRP exercise had the coalition well ahead. So Labor's, you know, relatively modest improvement in vote share looks like it might convert into a real improvement in the number of seats they were possibly looking at even just 6 weeks ago. It's all very close. I'm not making any bold predictions about who will win this election, but I think the position for Labor has gotten significantly stronger in the last 6 weeks. Anthony Albanese and the Labor camp would be much more optimistic than they were even 6 weeks ago.
Casey, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
A mother has been arrested after 3 children were stabbed multiple times in their home in Sydney's northwest. Police say 4 injured people are in hospital, and they're considering charging the woman with 3 counts of attempted murder. Tani Jash reports from Castle Hill.
A tragic turn of events have unfolded here in Sydney's northwest suburb of Borkham Hills, where emergency services were called to a home at around 5:15 a.m. this morning to find a 47-year-old woman and her 3 children, including one child who is wheelchair bound, to be suffering multiple stab wounds. Now, police allege that it was their mother, the 47-year-old woman who carried out this incident, and it was their 57-year-old father who woke to their screams in the early hours of the morning. He seized the weapon that was being used, which was a kitchen knife, and then called the police. Now, police allege that the mother tried to take her own life and then also kill her 3 children. And when it comes to this family, they're not known to police. Police say that this was the first time that they have been called to the property or had contact with the family. Let's have a quick listen to what they had to say.
That family home is really not known to police, if I'm honest with you. The 3 children all attend local schools, a relatively normal family, and if I can say to you, this is probably completely unexpected. There's certainly no domestic violence history reported to police on our records. There's no AVOs. This is the first time police have responded to this house for any type of domestic situation.
The 47-year-old mother and her 3 children have been taken to Westmead Hospital for medical attention as police continue their investigation, examining the crime scene, gathering evidence to find out what just happened here.
Donald Trump says he is, quote, pissed off with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin over his stance on Ukraine, and also made separate threats against Iran in an interview with US media. High-level diplomatic discussions have failed to stop Moscow's deadly attacks. One of the latest hit a military hospital, a shopping centre and homes in Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv.
I got out and then the whole ceiling fell in the other room. Everything fell into the house inside. My wife was also lying there. The ceiling came down on her and she was just lying under the bed. But our daughter was next to her and it just all collapsed on her. So we had to dig her out, barely pulled her out. Everything was on fire all around.
In a phone interview with NBC News, Mr Trump says he was very angry with Mr Putin after the Russian leader criticised the leadership of the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky. The comments reflect growing frustration from the White House about the lack of movement towards a ceasefire in Ukraine. Mr Trump said, if Russia and I are unable to make a deal on stopping the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if I think it was Russia's fault, I'm going to put secondary tariffs on all oil coming out of Russia. Those comments come after Mr Putin last week suggested new leadership for Ukraine to bring an end to the conflict.
We could discuss under the auspices of the UN, with the US, with European countries and of course with our partners and friends, the possibility of conducting temporary governance in Ukraine in order to hold democratic elections, in order to bring to power a viable government that enjoys the trust of the people, and then begin negotiations with them on a peace treaty, signed legitimate documents that will be recognised all over the world.
Donald Trump has also taken aim at Iran, threatening the regime with secondary tariffs if it does not reach an agreement on its nuclear program. He told NBC if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before, adding, there's a chance that if they don't make a deal, I will do secondary tariffs on them like I did 4 years ago.
The Iranian regime can never threaten the world with nuclear weapons.
That was Donald Trump speaking in 2017 during his first term when he withdrew the US from a deal that placed strict limits on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. Tehran has rebuffed the latest warning from Washington.
Direct negotiations have been rejected. But regarding indirect talks, Iran has always been involved in such talks, and the Supreme Leader has emphasised that indirect talks can still continue. We don't avoid talks. It's the breach of promises that has caused issues for us so far.
Authorities in Myanmar say the death toll from the devastating earthquake has risen to at least 1,700. The magnitude 7.7 tremor struck on Friday near the country's second largest city. The country's military leader says there are about 3,400 people injured and about 300 still missing. International aid is finally starting to reach those in need, with the widespread destruction hampering rescue and recovery efforts.
Many homes have been destroyed, road and bridge damaged. Many children and families are still missing and traumatized. We need urgent assistance, especially for the children, who often suffer the most in these kinds of situations.
In Bangkok, at least 18 people have been confirmed killed in the collapse of an unfinished high-rise building, with 78 missing. Authorities say an extensive search and rescue mission is underway.
I cannot say that I feel good at all, but we are working around the clock, and the only determination that we have in common is to be able to find the survivors.
And East Asia correspondent Kathleen Calderwood joins us now from Bangkok. Kathleen, we'll get to the situation in Thailand in just a moment, but first, what's the latest out of Myanmar?
Well, look, the situation in Myanmar is really dire. The junta has announced that at least 1,700 people have been killed, and they're warning that that death toll will likely rise. There has been panic in Myanmar as well because there have been a number of aftershocks, including a 5.1 magnitude quake yesterday afternoon. So people obviously already very traumatised and scared, and this is really adding to it. Now we're hearing that some of the rescue efforts are very painstaking and slow because, of course, in Myanmar, which has been devastated by civil war now for some years, they don't have the kind of heavy machinery that you can see behind me here in Thailand. So people are really pulling rubble away with their bare hands, trying to rescue loved ones. We've heard from one resident who said that there's an 11-storey building in Mandalay where they can hear people screaming inside, and they're really working hard to try and rescue those people. Now, to compound all of this, there are accusations that the junta has continued airstrikes since the earthquake. There are calls from international organisations and Myanmar's National Unity Government, its government in exile, if you could describe it that way, to pause hostilities now for the coming weeks in particular, while the country tries to deal with the aftermath of this disaster. Some international aid is getting in. Several teams from a number of countries, including China and Thailand, have arrived, but they're mainly arriving in Yangon because the Mandalay airport has been affected in the earthquake, and so now they're facing a fairly arduous journey on damaged roads to get up to the worst hit areas around Mandalay.
Kathleen, tell us what's happening where you are there in Bangkok.
So we're in front of the site where a more than 30-storey high-rise collapsed on Friday when the earthquake hit. It was under construction, and it's believed that around 80 people are trapped inside. So as you can see, there's huge cranes there working frantically to try and clear this concrete. Obviously, it's a delicate operation because they need the heavy machinery to get rid of all that rubble, but it's also they're trying not to hurt anyone further, anyone inside who might still be there. Remarkably, there have been signs of life detected overnight, apparently. So we've seen this morning some rescue crews actually be lifted on top of the pile of rubble to try and see what they can see from up there, see if there's any way to get to people from the top. We also saw yesterday afternoon some of the cranes start to work around the outside of the building. We were told by a worker who had escaped that there is a basement, so we're wondering if perhaps they're trying to dig in to the basement from the outside. Now, what's really compounded the tragedy here is it seems like most of the workers on that site were Burmese migrants. So there's a lot of families here who've been camped out all weekend hoping for news. A lot of them also too trying to get information out of Myanmar as well, which has really borne the brunt of the devastation. So we spoke to one gentleman who believes that his brother is trapped beneath the rubble here.
They haven't told us anything about the safety of the construction. We haven't got any information so far. We've lost contact. We haven't got any updates about my brother. The name is in their hospital admissions list, but they did not tell us which hospital. The names of the deceased persons were not disclosed to us. I'm feeling very overwhelmed, and we feel very deeply.
So there's a huge amount of rescue workers, military, police here, also volunteers and other community organisations supporting the rescue effort, making sure everyone is watered and fed, as well as taking care of those families that are waiting. As you can probably see, it started to rain here quite heavily, so that will no doubt complicate efforts. Questions have been raised about the safety of this building and the construction, and we've heard that from the Industry Minister of Thailand that they've taken steel samples from the building to test them, and the Deputy Prime Minister, who inspected the site yesterday, has also told media that they've set up a committee to investigate, and they're expecting them to report back in about a week.
East Asia correspondent Kathleen Calderwood in Bangkok, thank you. Floodwaters are continuing to wreak havoc in Queensland. Reporter Grace Nakamura has more from Longreach.
We've heard this morning about 70 people have been evacuated from their homes and moved to higher ground in the southwest Queensland town of Thargomindah, where they're preparing for further flooding today. This extreme weather event started about midway through last week with prolonged heavy rainfall. As you can see around me, that rainfall has cleared, but the disaster is still unfolding in parts of outback Queensland. The focus today is on these towns, Thargomindah and Yulo. Yulo is close to the New South Wales border. Over the weekend, some of the levees were breached in parts due to this floodwater coming through. But this is truly unprecedented flooding for this part of outback Queensland. This has eclipsed the 1974 flood, which for many residents out here was the most destructive flood they can remember. But the Baloo River in Thargomindah at the moment has now reached 6.85 metres and is still continuing to rise. So residents in these towns have seen the destruction the floodwaters have brought to towns further north of them, and today are just bracing themselves for what's to come.
The real economic impact and what will flow through the community is the devastation to agriculture, and we're going to have to make sure that we continue in the short term to deliver fuel and fodder, which the work's been going around the clock to do that, to give every hope where there is dry land to be able to keep those animals fed. And then in the long term, we're going to need to lead a big recovery, including re-establishing exclusion fencing and helping them restock after what will be really devastating scenes.
So that's Queensland Premier David Crisafulli. He was in outback Queensland last week speaking there because the agricultural industry will certainly be the hardest hit here. AgForce President Shane McCarthy spoke to us earlier today. He said it's hard to know just how much stock has been lost because the floodwaters are still present. Graziers haven't been able to get out and about to actually measure the full extent of the damage. But he says he's spoken to some people who've lost 100% of their stock. And at this stage, it's about trying to keep that cattle alive. And one of the major concerns here is for getting enough aviation fuel. Choppers have been integral to the effort here to make sure that they can get people out safely, they can take cattle to higher ground, and they can even bring food and medication supplies to towns that have been cut off for days and will likely continue to be cut off. So in this part of outback Queensland, it's very much a waiting game. The Weather Bureau says that more rainfall is forecast tomorrow and into Wednesday into already saturated parts of Queensland, which is bringing anxiety for people who've already had to weather this storm so far.
Grace Nakamura reporting from Longreach in Queensland. Thank you. Some breaking news now. Former AFL player Andrew Krakauer has died, aged 42. The ex-Tiger and Magpie suffered a suspected heart attack in Perth on Sunday. Krakauer played 102 games for Richmond and 35 for Collingwood, including the Pies' 2011 grand final defeat to Geelong. Millions of Muslims are marking the start of Eid festivities. For the past month, Muslims around the world have been fasting from sunrise to sunset for the holy month of Ramadan. Eid al-Fitr begins with family and community events, with daytime meals back on the table. In Nigeria, which is home to Africa's largest Muslim population, hundreds observed Eid prayers. The ritual is typically performed in congregation in a mosque or open area. In Sudan, prayers were mixed with calls for peace and hopes of reuniting families scattered by the region's ongoing war. Similar sentiments are being expressed in Gaza, where Israeli strikes have interrupted solemn celebrations. Many Palestinians performed Eid prayers outside demolished mosques. While in Saudi Arabia, millions of pilgrims joined in mass prayers at the Grand Mosque of Mecca. Live across Australia on the ABC News channel and streaming on ABC iView and online, you're with ABC News Mornings. I'm Gemma Veness, coming to you from our studio in Parramatta in Western Sydney. And these are the top stories we're following this hour. The Prime Minister is spending day 3 of the election campaign in Perth, hoping Western Australia can deliver Labor more electoral success. The party made huge ground in the West at the last federal election, picking up 4 seats. Meanwhile, opposition leader Peter Dutton has started the day in the New South Wales Hunter region, spruiking his energy plans. A 47-year-old woman is under police guard in hospital after allegedly trying to murder her 3 children in the family home in Sydney's northwest. 2 girls aged 13 and 16 and a 10-year-old boy were found with stab wounds at their home in Balcombe Hills just after 5 this morning. They're in a stable condition in hospital. US President Donald Trump has escalated his rhetoric towards Iran, threatening bombings and more tariffs if the country doesn't agree to a nuclear deal. He's also vowing to punish Vladimir Putin with oil tariffs if he feels that Moscow is blocking efforts to end the war in Ukraine. And major flood warnings remain in place for communities across southwest Queensland. Record-breaking rainfall has lashed the region for nearly a week, cutting off towns, destroying crops and isolating livestock. Flood warnings are also in place for many river systems in northern New South Wales. Let's get more on the election campaign now. Chief Digital Political Correspondent Jacob Grieber has more on the PM's decision to head west.
The West has been a place where the Labor brand is in good shape. The state election was very strong in Labor's favour. That was only a few weeks ago. And the Prime Minister has been there close to 30 times. This might be his 30th trip. I'm not quite sure on the details, but it's that scale since 2022, since he became Prime Minister. He is handing out money for a hospital, a local hospital there, and he'll be talking about why he's friendly to a state like Western Australia with its huge resources industries, iron ore and gas in particular. And he's sending a message that this is a Labor government that's supportive of those industries. And he can expect that, all things being equal, the pendulum would have shifted away from Labor over these years, but he needs to hang on to those wins from last time.
Jacob, how did the weekend campaigning go for the leaders?
Look, it kicked off in its expected sort of relatively frantic pace. There were a bunch of different things that really cut through. The Prime Minister and Labor announcing a supermarkets policy on Sunday morning. Not a lot of detail on that one, frankly, kind of has the vibe of a sort of a slogan and a headline rather than any real policy meat on that. The argument being, I think, supermarkets that, quote, take the piss are the ones that are going to be targeted. That's not a particularly sharp, useful piece of language when it comes to the law, which is what this is ultimately about, and the competition regulator cracking down on that type of price gouging where and when it happens. The opposition more emphasising its plan to get energy prices down, and you could say equally there's a lack of detail there around how it's going to manage getting more gas into the economy, which is what opposition leader Peter Dutton announced in his budget reply speech on Thursday night. He says he will get gas prices down to $10 a gigajoule. They're currently just under $14 by the end of this calendar year, and that'll lead to lower energy prices. Devil in the detail, though.
Now, Peter Dutton chose to head to Western Sydney yesterday. What was the significance of that?
So you're beaming out of Western Sydney. It's one of the key battlegrounds in this election. There are a lot of seats in Western Sydney and I guess the equivalent kind of regions in Melbourne and Brisbane. These are mortgage belts. These are areas with large ethnic communities. And it's where the cost of living crisis has been felt very acutely. People are struggling with their transport costs. Peter Dutton has a policy to cut the fuel excise immediately by 20 cents. That's about half, a little over 20 cents, I should say, per litre. That would bring, he says, immediate relief to those communities where people do have to commute a long way. So he's gone, I guess, into Labor heartland, but the coalition feels these are seats they can bring back to their side of the ledger.
And what about the coalition's gas reservation policy? I mean, how has it been received with voters and the industry? Is it likely that Labor would do similar?
Well, we'll wait and see on Labor. My sense is they're really still watching, gauging the reaction. The response from the industry has been verging on apoplectic, it has to be said. Certainly that's what they're telling me. They're very unhappy with the gas reservation idea. Not the concept per se, but the fact that the version that Peter Dutton announced on Thursday in his budget reply speech very much affects existing investments, existing infrastructure, much of which is devoted to exporting gas to very lucrative offshore markets. Some of them anyway, were okay with the idea of a reservation that only affects future gas projects. And remember, this is a Commonwealth area. It can only really do this on offshore gas. So this is places like off the northwest shelf of WA, and off the Northern Territory. Both are locations that are not particularly useful for the East Coast gas market because we don't have pipelines that cross the continent. You'd need to put gas on ships, LNG ships, bring it back east and then turn it back into gas. All very expensive and also, frankly, the sort of things that take a long time to be put into practice. So they're the sort of questions that hang over this policy. The other thing the industry is very concerned about is if this reservation is imposed as it's been described, and as I said, we don't have a lot of detail, but as described, that could lead to less gas being available on the East Coast because there's less of an incentive, the industry says, to extract gas. And to take gas out, it's not just a tap that you turn on and off. You have to spend a lot of money every year, some $4 billion in Queensland alone to get the gas out.
Jacob, is there a sense that Labor's bad polling is shifting somewhat?
Well, this has been brewing for 4, 5, 6 weeks, you could say. Early sense that the polls were starting to shift. Certainly they've narrowed, and as you've been reporting this morning, there's a flurry of polls out over the last 24 hours or so, all pointing to the same thing, which is that it's about neck and neck in terms of two-party preferred. There's been a shift, it seems, towards Labor's primary. That's picking up somewhat. And both sides will say, well, that's probably inevitable because there was an unusually large, or there still is an unusually large undecided vote, which is indicative perhaps that people are not happy with what they've got right now, but they haven't shifted over to Peter Dutton in the numbers that he would need to get a majority of his own right. He has a big mountain to climb. He's got to pick up something like 20 seats, whereas Labor has a 3-seat majority. They only need to lose a few seats, and then they're in minority. The polls as they stand now, and I would take them with a grain of salt this early in the campaign, a lot can and will change in these polls, but they would have Labor pretty close to a majority in its own right.
And you wrote a piece yesterday about a moment that may come back to bite Peter Dutton. Can you tell us what happened and why it could be problematic?
Well, it was a sort of funny moment where he interviewed himself, in a sense, at a press conference and asked the question, does anyone think that Labor can win a majority? And he paused for, I counted almost 6 seconds as he looked around the gallery. No one, or the press pack that was with him, no one responded. And then he answered his own question and said, essentially that no one thinks Labor can win a majority. Now, in the 24 hours since, we've seen polls that on paper, I stress, on paper, actually might give Labor a majority. So it's one of those funny sort of moments. We might come back to it later in the campaign as perhaps demonstrating a bit of hubris. Now, I think the point he's making as well is that he believes whatever happens, voters are going to put a parliament in place where the crossbench has a lot of clout. And that's going to hang over this campaign all the way to the finish line. Which side is sending signals to that crossbench? How will that crossbench split? There are some who you would say would be natural coalition supporters, and then there are others who are natural Labor supporters. And the voters in the seats where they're electing these independents, the Teals, some of them have more of a National Party sort of flavour to them, some of them obviously leaning more Labor, Green. Both sides are going to push, both of the major parties are going to push those candidates to reveal which way they'll jump if there is a hung parliament.
Jacob Gruber, our Chief Digital Political Correspondent, thank you. Iran has rejected the prospect of direct talks with the US over its nuclear program. It comes as Donald Trump threatens military force in an interview with US media. Emily Grimenz has the latest from Washington.
Well, Iran seems to have rejected Donald Trump's overtures for direct talks for a new nuclear deal. Of course, Donald Trump pulled out of an existing nuclear deal with Iran in his first term in office. That deal limited Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. Iran has long maintained that its nuclear program is strictly for peaceful purposes, but Western powers do believe that it is developing capability for a nuclear weapon. Now, since his return to office, Donald Trump has been sharpening his rhetoric on Iran. He's given a phone interview to NBC News where he's threatened bombing and secondary tariffs if Iran does not agree to a new deal. He wrote a letter to Iran's supreme leader earlier this month, and Iran's regime has now made its response to that more public. Here's what the Iranian president had to say.
Direct negotiations have been rejected, but regarding indirect talks, Iran has always been involved in such talks, and the Supreme Leader has emphasised that indirect talks can still continue. We don't avoid talks. It's the breach of promises that has caused issues for us so far.
Donald Trump's comments about threatening bombing and secondary tariffs did take place in an interview before those comments from Iran's president. Now, speaking to the same network, he's also lashed out at Vladimir Putin over the weekend. The Trump administration is seeking to bring the war in Ukraine to an end, something Donald Trump previously said he could do in one day. It seems he's frustrated with Mr. Putin. He's told the same journalist at NBC News that he's very angry that Mr. Putin has criticised Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky, and he said he could also impose further tariffs on Russia. He's threatened a levy of up to 50% on imports of any Russian oil into the United States.
Emily Grimenz in Washington, DC. A decade-long Four Corners investigation has uncovered explosive new evidence that suggests the criminality of a former top crime official was far more extensive than the public was led to believe. Janine Cohen reports.
This is a story of two very different men. One was meant to take down drug traffickers.
He's gone from being a defender of the law to a defendant in a multi-million-dollar drug case. Mark Standen is a 30-year veteran of the force and a senior investigator with the New South Wales Crime Commission.
Standen was working at the top of international drug syndicates. The sums involved are eye-watering.
The one, the only,
The other man, a former world champion kickboxer, who police claimed was planning a massive drug import, just like Mark Standen.
I feel I was arrested as a means to cover up the full extent of Mark Standen's corruption.
For 16 years, Adam Watt has been investigating his nemesis, Mark Standen. What he's uncovered goes to the heart of justice in New South Wales.
From the moment I was arrested, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't give up until the truth was told.
Mark Standen was the most senior crime fighter ever to be convicted of a drug import in Australia. At the time of his arrest, authorities were desperate to control the narrative.
This is an isolated incident of one person engaging in crime. I don't think that justifies a Royal Commission.
What we're about to show you is Standen's corruption was far more sinister and deeper than authorities ever let on.
When you're in this big dark hole that they were in, you can either apologise or you can dig the hole deeper. And it appears to me that all the Crime Commission ever wanted to do was dig the hole deeper.
Mark Standen says he's a wronged man. This is his first television interview. Have you ever committed a crime at all?
No.
In an investigation spanning more than a decade, we can reveal that Mark Standen was engaged in many crimes. He protected criminals, sabotaged major investigations into organised crime, and is believed to have helped facilitate multiple drug imports.
The only way you can move forward and have some confidence that things will not happen again is if you absolutely investigate everything.
And you can see that full story on Four Corners at 8:30 tonight on ABC TV or anytime on ABC iView. Sam Yang is here now with your business news.
Well, Australian shares fall ahead of the Reserve Bank of Australia's interest rate decision. The RBA is expected to keep interest rate unchanged tomorrow. Mining and banking stocks are leading the losses in early trade. Let's take a look at the numbers now. The All Ords and the ASX 200 index are down around 1.5% each. All sectors are trading in the red. If we take a look at the movers now, Light & Wonder, Pilbara Minerals and Zipco are losing substantial ground. Back in the trend, Aurora, Boss Energy and A2 Milk are among a handful of stocks trading higher. Turning across the region now, where the NZ 50 is down around 0.6% at the moment. Nikkei has plunged 4% at open, while markets across China will get underway shortly. Now over to the US, all three major indices ended sharply lower on Friday with sell-offs in Amazon, Microsoft and other technology heavyweights. The Dow Jones index down 1.7%, the S&P 500 slumped 2% and the Nasdaq Composite lost 2.7%. Onto commodity markets now. Gold is hitting another new record high as the threat of trade wars drives a rush towards the safe haven metal. Oil prices are also heading higher as traders assess a tightening of crude supplies. And the Australian dollar is a little weaker against the greenback. It's buying around 62.8 US cents. And that's finance.
Thanks, Sam. Australian actor and martial arts expert Richard Norton has died. Over his film career, he faced off with some of the world's biggest martial arts action stars, including Jackie Chan and Chuck Norris. His wife confirmed his passing on Instagram, saying she's lost her everything. A German space rocket has exploded seconds after takeoff from Norway. The uncrewed rocket was billed as the EU's first attempt at an orbital flight from European land. The Spectrum test rocket was built by a German startup that says the launch is part of a project aimed at launching satellites. Despite the dramatic explosion, the company's CEO dubbed the mission a success as it was able to gather valuable flight data. Before the time of influencers and vloggers, the ABC had Race Around the World, an edgy 1997 documentary competition that launched radio personality John Safran. Australian Story talks to the contestants, judges and producers of one of the 90s unlikeliest TV hits.
Race Around the World was a lot of things rolled into one. It was a documentary show. It was a travel show. It was a studio-based almost panel show, but most importantly, it was a competition. Australians love competition.
We just thought a bunch of young people going around the world making shit films. Who's going to watch that?
Crazily, it turned out to be extremely popular. It really did hit a nerve.
I'm in Yemen, and because I'm a woman, I can't show you my face.
If this is the happiest place on earth, how come I'm so miserable?
Well, I'm in Sikawiti, and this is Elf.
It was a time before selfies and before TikTok and before filming yourself doing everything.
How does a 25-year-old Australian represent himself in such a complicated world?
I don't know if we were the original influencers, but it was definitely a different style of filmmaking that no one had seen like that style on telly before, I don't think. It was pretty fresh.
We're travelling to the next church on the back of this garbage truck.
We had no idea that it was going to be as insane as it was.
I got robbed, I got mugged, shook down, pepper sprayed.
You're forcing me.
Everyone's pushed to their absolute breaking point.
It was mad. Not only could we have died and
they didn't know about it.
It was a massive ratings hit. Australians loved it. It was one of those weird TV dreams that actually came true.
And you can watch tonight's Australian Story at 8 p.m. on ABC TV and ABC iView. Former AFL player Andrew Cracker has died, aged 42. The ex-Tiger and Magpie suffered a suspected heart attack in Perth on Sunday. On his return to WA, Cracker joined the Swan Districts in the WAFL and went on to win the Sandover Medal in 2010. Cracker played 102 games for Richmond and 35 for Collingwood, including the Pies' 2011 grand final defeat to Geelong. In NRL, Daly Cherry Evans has led the Manly Sea Eagles to victory just days after telling the club he'll be stepping down. Charles Bryce has more with the day's sports news.
It was just days after telling the Manly Sea Eagles that he wanted out at the season's end. Daly Cherry Evans was cheered onto the field for their game against the Parramatta Eels. Sea Eagles fans, they didn't cheer for all that long though, with Tom Trbojevic leaving the field with yet another injury, a medial cruciate ligament is the fear there. Manly cruised to a 26-12 victory. It was a tighter win for the Warriors over West Tigers. Coming from behind, Luke Metcalf secured the victory with a penalty goal in the 73rd minute.
Now, the biggest game in the West took place last night. Who equalised an impressive record?
Yeah, well, Fremantle has won its first game of the season in a dominant performance in the Western Derby. It was Jai Amiss. He did most of the damage on the scoreboard. He kicked 4 goals as Freo ran out 40-point winners. But Caleb Sarong, he took home a record-equalling 4th Glendinning Allen medal for best on ground. There was also another game yesterday. Taylor Walker turned back time. He kicked 4 goals in the Crows' win over North Melbourne. Unbeaten so far this season, it's the Crows' best start to a season in 9 years.
And staying with the AFL, Richmond have a big decision to make.
Yeah, they'll need to decide today whether to challenge a 3-match ban handed to Ryan Mansell for an incident on Saturday that left St Liam O'Connell concussed. Mansell pushed O'Connell into a contest that resulted in the 22-year-old colliding with Tom Lynch, and he was unable to finish out the game. The act has been graded by the match review officer as careless, severe and also high contact.
Now, we didn't have to wait too long before we saw the first goal in the Women's A-League yesterday.
No, we didn't, Gemma. It took all of 21 seconds before the ball was in the back of the net. Brisbane, that wasn't enough for Brisbane to win over the Central Coast Mariners, though. Midfielder Laini Fryer hitting the back of the net, just seconds into the match. Having already equalised, though, the Mariners made the most of a defensive mix-up and took the 2-1 lead in the 71st minute. Central Coast, they just need 1 point from their remaining 2 matches to secure a place in the finals. And just quickly, the Central Coast Mariners in the men's got into the winners list. Yeah, they had their first win in 11 games across all competitions. They beat Perth Glory. It got off to a quick start. Mariners taking the lead after just 5 minutes of play with a stunning header there. Perth then levelled from a corner about 5 minutes later. Mikael Docker, he scored from the penalty spot. Eventually, the Central Coast Mariners 3-1 winners. Thanks, Charles. Rail trails are attracting a growing number of visitors as people seek out adventure and outdoor tourism experiences. In Queensland's inland Burnett region, businesses have popped up along the rail trail, improving the fortunes of small towns along the route.
Bicycles ready, these riders are at the helm of a new wave of adventure tourism.
COVID was probably one of the best things that could happen for outdoor tourism.
This is the Boyne-Burnett Inland Rail Trail in central Queensland, stretching 270 kilometres from Tarragoola to Gayndah. The first section opened in 2021.
The overall aim is to actually have the entire corridor open, so it's walkable or rideable for horses or bikes. So that's the ultimate plan. It will then be the longest rail trail in the Southern Hemisphere.
But the region is already reaping the benefits, with thousands of visitors using the trail each year.
We've got micro businesses that have started to open up that are able to support the rail trail and those users.
and it's making a difference for the little towns.
The estimated economic value is somewhere between $50 a day and around $483 a day per visitor.
It's going to revitalise a lot of little areas, the whole
Those smaller
system.
towns probably have the most to gain.
Not only is the region attracting more visitors who want to connect with nature, but its tourist season is running for longer.
The best of it's still to come. There's still, even locals don't realise what it's going to bring to the area and what it is currently doing for the area. So I think, yeah, we've got so much more to gain from it.
Grace Whiteside, ABC News, Barrymoon.
Let's take a look at the weather. Here's Nate Byrne.
Ex-tropical cyclone Diane is continuing to pummel Western Australia and increasingly the territory as it shifts eastwards. It's lost its cyclone strength for sure, but it's still bringing with it quite a lot of wet weather, and the cloud cover is also going to help really cool things down around there through central Australia. Not so cool over in the west, lots of heat there, and for parts of the south of the country where we've got some gusty winds, we've got plenty of high fire danger to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, the low pressure system that helped drench Queensland and northern New South Wales, leading to the major flooding that's still ongoing, sitting offshore, it's pushing some winds and showers into the coast of New South Wales with hazardous surf there. We'll watch this rain as it creeps through the interior over the next couple of days, but for now, Queensland's still dealing with some heavy falls in the north of the state. Even Brisbane's looking at a possible shower today. It's getting to 29, but for the most part, over those flooded areas, the skies are relatively clear. 24 in Sydney. You can expect a wet and windy one. It's getting to 22 with a possible shower in Canberra today. Melbourne's aiming for 21, partly cloudy skies for you. 17 in Hobart. You can expect some showers. Over in South Australia, Adelaide's looking for a clear 25 degrees. 34 in the west for Perth. And up top Darwin, dealing with some showers, maybe a storm as well. You'll get to 32 degrees. In the days ahead, we'll watch ex-tropical cyclone Diane as it reaches the east, bringing a short, sharp burst of big falls over those flooded areas in Queensland and northeastern New South Wales. That'll happen Wednesday, but then clear fairly quickly, and then we're back to a much more regular routine of fronts in the south and a bit of tropical activity in the north, but still plenty of falls, particularly concerning for those regions experiencing flooding as we speak. Water's continuing to rise for many communities that'll be cut off, some potentially for weeks. Tomorrow, we're looking at some more wet weather in Brisbane and then a clear one for the rest of the south, except for Hobart. A couple of showers down that way. And up top, no change for Darwin. Couple of showers, maybe a storm. Top of 31.
Thank you, Nate. I'm Gemma Veness. Thank you for being here with us for our first broadcast here in our new home in Parramatta in Sydney's West. That's all from me. Melissa McKay is up next on the ABC News channel. Stay with
Everyone who had anything to do with him probably regrets setting eyes on him.
The Crooked Cop.
Receiving money from informants, it's like putting a fox in charge of the chickens.
He's dealing with the top international drug syndicates. The sums involved are eye-watering.
The Cover-Up.
Why would the Crime Commission mislead the Police Minister and the Parliament?
The Secrets finally exposed.
How the could you employ someone like this?
Have you ever committed a crime at all?
Four Corners, tonight, ABC and ABC iView.
Every Monday, there's a lot to talk about. It's over to you to ask the important questions.
Does our current political system reward narcissists?
Who decides what's true and what is not?
To challenge power.
Mental health care in this country is inadequate.
Oh, yeah, let me at it.
To debate the issues.
It's a strange time to be a man.
We've got a crisis of loneliness.
We are multicultural. God's a swinging voter.
Q&A tonight on ABC and ABC iView.
You're looking at a conservation triumph. You'd think these endangered elephants are universally loved. Not here in Botswana.
An enormous population comes with big problems.
Elephants on the rampage.
Elephants, they kill.
We're making do-it-yourself tear gas.
I can see how that could work.
Who's paying the price for this conservation success story?
It's not benefiting us. Not many people want to conserve what they fear.
Foreign Correspondent, tomorrow at 8 on ABC and ABC iView.
From grand old dames...
This is incredibly impressive.
...to hostels on highways.
Oh my, this is disgusting. It's horrendous.
These homeowners are embarking on the challenge of a lifetime.
But that's not happiness on your face, that's exhaustion.
It's not bad, but it's not good, you know?
It's just right.
Bringing the past back to life.
Look at this gorgeous piece of Australia.
It feels like home. It's fantastic.
New Restoration Australia, Thursday at 8, or stream the full season on ABC iView.
Today, Go West, Anthony Albanese promises a Perth hospital upgrade if re-elected. While Peter Dutton again promises cheaper power prices under a coalition government, but won't say by how much.
I want to reduce power prices. I want to reduce power prices because that's how we're going to bring grocery prices down.
Also today, fears for livestock across outback Queensland. Rising rivers have cut off communities, forcing evacuations. A mother arrested in northwest Sydney after 3 children were stabbed. And desperately needed aid starts to flow into Myanmar following Friday's major earthquake. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Melissa McKay.